From the outside, their life looked like a page torn from a modern-day fairy tale. Dr. Jonathan Reed was the kind of man magazines would feature in top 40 under 40 lists. At 35, he had already built one of the most reputable architecture firms in Phoenix, Arizona. His striking features, sharp jawline, and always dressed in crisp, tailored suits, made people assume success came naturally. But Jonathan had worked his way up, from late-night drafting tables to million-dollar blueprints. And then there was Angela, elegant, poised, enigmatic. She was the kind of woman people noticed in a room, not because she was loud, but because she was still, always observing, always composed. Her almond-shaped eyes, dark like a moonless sky, gave away little. She spoke softly, almost like she was afraid of disturbing the air. They met at a gallery opening downtown 3.5 years ago. Jonathan had been attending out of obligation to a client. Angela was alone, admiring an abstract painting of shattered glass. She said it spoke to her, that it reminded her how beautiful brokenness could be. That night they had wine. The next weekend, dinner. Within 6 months they were engaged. Love at first sight, people said. Fate, others believed. Their wedding was intimate, held in Sedona with red rocks behind them and the wind weaving through Angela's lace veil. Friends noticed how Jonathan looked at her, like she was the only person on earth. In public, they were affectionate but never excessive. Angela, especially, was always graceful, careful not to cross lines or raise eyebrows. They settled into a cozy 2-story home in Scottsdale, far enough from the city's chaos but close enough to Jonathan's firm. Angela, who claimed to be a freelance editor, worked from home. She rarely talked about her clients, but Jonathan didn't pry. He admired her independence and the way she respected his long hours. To neighbors, they were the power couple. To co-workers, they were relationship goals. To friends, they were enviably private. But in private, cracks began to form. Jonathan tried not to let it bother him at first. But over time, one thing became undeniable. Angela avoided physical intimacy. At first, she blamed her cycle. Then stress. Then migraines. She slept in loungewear that covered every inch of skin. On their honeymoon, she kept the lights off, claiming she was shy. Jonathan, ever the gentleman, never pressured her. He believed love should be patient. But 3 years in, things hadn't changed. No children. No open discussions about why. Every time he brought it up, she changed the subject or brushed it off. "I just need a little time," she would whisper, resting her head on his chest. "I'm not ready yet." Still, she made his coffee every morning, left little notes on his desk, and texted him sweet nothings in the middle of the day. To Jonathan, she was a mystery, but one he believed he was slowly unraveling. He didn't know that the truth wasn't a knot to be untangled. It was a ticking bomb, buried deep beneath layers of lies. One that would explode in the cold white walls of a gynecologist's office and shatter his world forever. It began like most mornings in the Reed household. Quiet, calculated, and sterile. Jonathan sat at the breakfast bar, sipping his coffee while scrolling through emails. Angela floated in behind him, her hair perfectly brushed, a silk robe tied tightly around her waist. She moved like a dancer, graceful but distant. "Big day?" she asked, pouring him more coffee. He nodded. "Client review, and an inspection downtown." Angela smiled politely. "You'll ace it." She always said the right thing, supportive, encouraging, composed. But lately, her words felt rehearsed, like lines from a script she had memorized too well. Jonathan studied her face. Not a wrinkle out of place. Not a strand of hair misaligned. And yet, he felt something wasn't right. That morning, the distance between them wasn't just emotional. It was physical, 1,000 invisible walls stacked over 3 years. The first time Jonathan brought up children had been on their 1-year anniversary. He remembered the moment vividly. A candlelit dinner, an expensive bottle of wine, and the subtle tremble in Angela's hand when he said, "Maybe it's time we talk about starting a family." She had gone pale. Her voice, normally so calm, cracked ever so slightly as she said, "I'm not sure I'm ready." He respected her choice. He loved her. He told himself she just needed time. But as months turned to years, Angela never initiated intimacy. She turned her head when he kissed her, flinched sometimes, slept curled into the far edge of the bed, claiming she was a light sleeper. Jonathan began to doubt himself. Was he unattractive to her? Was he too demanding? Too patient? But one night changed everything. It was late, and Jonathan had come home early from a canceled meeting. He heard water running upstairs, the shower. Angela hadn't expected him. He quietly stepped up the stairs and pushed the bedroom door open. Her clothes were in a neat pile as always, but something caught his eye. A long strip of surgical tape. And beneath it, a glimpse of something he couldn't quite understand. A scar. Deep, clean, deliberate. He stood frozen. Angela stepped out moments later, towel wrapped tight, her face startled to see him. "You're early," she said quickly, avoiding his eyes. Jonathan tried to play it off. "Yeah, meeting got canceled." But his mind was already racing. That scar. The way she always kept herself covered. The absence of even the faintest talk of her past, of childhood, of family. Something was off. That night he barely slept. He stared at the ceiling, listening to the soft rhythm of Angela's breath beside him. She slept peacefully, as though there were no secrets between them. But Jonathan couldn't shake the feeling that his wife, the woman he had vowed to spend his life with, wasn't who she claimed to be. The next morning he didn't ask. He observed. He noticed how she always wore full coverage clothing, even in the heat of summer. He noticed how she locked the bathroom door, even when showering. He noticed how she avoided mirrors, cameras, and questions. Angela never talked about her family. Her phone had no contacts labeled Mom or Dad. Her laptop was always password protected. Her ID looked real. But now Jonathan wondered, was it? One evening over dinner he gently asked again. "Maybe we should see a specialist about fertility. Just to check." No pressure. Angela froze, fork in midair. "You don't trust me?" she asked, voice cold. "No," he said carefully. "I love you. I just want to understand." After a long silence, she nodded. "Okay." The appointment was set for the following Monday. Angela agreed to see Dr. Ellen Kramer, a highly recommended OB/GYN in Scottsdale. Jonathan felt a strange mix of guilt and relief. Maybe now everything would make sense. Maybe the scars had a medical explanation. Maybe the distance had a hormonal cause. He didn't know then that in less than a week, the illusion of his perfect marriage would implode inside a cold examination room. And he would never see his wife or the truth the same way again. The waiting room smelled like antiseptic and baby powder. That strange blend of cleanliness and expectation. Framed photos of smiling newborns lined the walls, and soft instrumental music played through hidden speakers. Jonathan sat stiffly in the vinyl chair, flipping through a parenting magazine he wasn't reading. Across from him, a pregnant woman rubbed her belly while her partner whispered something that made her laugh. The moment pierced Jonathan, a painful reminder of what he believed was missing in his life. Beside him, Angela sat still. Her legs were crossed tightly at the ankles, her hands clasped in her lap. She wore a high-collared blouse and long sleeves, despite the desert heat outside. Her sunglasses were pushed up onto her head, and her lips held the ghost of a smile. But her eyes, they were somewhere else. "Angela Reed?" A nurse called from the doorway. Angela stood slowly. "I'll go in alone," she said gently. "You don't have to wait." Jonathan smiled reassuringly. "I want to." Her gaze lingered on him, a flicker of something unreadable in her expression, before she nodded and followed the nurse down the hall. Jonathan watched her disappear, that familiar feeling returning. Something isn't right. Inside the examination room, the fluorescent lights buzzed faintly overhead. Dr. Ellen Kramer, a woman in her 50s with a no-nonsense demeanor and wire-rimmed glasses, glanced over Angela's chart. "Any pain? Irregular cycles?" she asked, slipping on a pair of gloves. Angela's voice was quiet. I haven't had a cycle in years. Dr. Kramer paused. Are you on birth control? No. The doctor frowned and looked up. Have you ever had a pelvic exam before? Angela hesitated. No. I've avoided it. Dr. Kramer's professional expression remained steady. That's okay. But if you're trying to conceive, it's important we do a full evaluation. I'll be as gentle as possible. Angela's knuckles turned white as she gripped the exam table. Okay. As the exam began, Dr. Kramer's calm demeanor shifted. Her movements slowed. Her gloved hands paused. There was no uterus, no cervix, no female reproductive anatomy at all. Dr. Kramer stepped back and removed her gloves. Her heart was pounding, but she maintained her professionalism. Angela, she said carefully, can you tell me if you've had any gender-affirming procedures in the past? Angela's eyes glistened. I was born male. I've had surgery. Years ago. The words hung in the air, heavy and trembling. I never thought I'd have to say that again, she whispered. Not to anyone. Dr. Kramer nodded slowly. Thank you for telling me. This doesn't change how I treat you. But your husband is in the waiting room. Does he know? Angela's lips trembled. No. Back in the waiting room, Jonathan glanced at his watch for the fourth time. A nurse walked past, then paused, and whispered something to another. Their faces tensed. Moments later, Dr. Kramer stepped out. Mr. Reed. Jonathan stood immediately. Everything okay? Dr. Kramer took a breath. Can I speak to you in private for a moment? They stepped into a consultation room. Jonathan's stomach tightened. I want to stress that everything we discussed today is confidential, Dr. Kramer began. But something came up during your wife's exam that you need to be aware of. Jonathan said nothing, but his face paled. Your wife is not biologically female, Dr. Kramer said. She's had gender-confirming surgery. There are no reproductive organs consistent with female anatomy. Jonathan blinked. Once, twice. I don't understand. She was born male. The words shattered something in him. Angela, his wife, the woman he'd loved, defended, sacrificed for, was a man? No, a woman who used to be a man. But in that moment, nuance didn't exist. Only betrayal did. Jonathan stood, dazed. Where is she? But Angela was already gone. While Dr. Kramer had stepped out, Angela had dressed, slipped through the rear hallway, and exited through a side door. The nurse later said she moved like a shadow, silent, precise, as if she'd planned it. Jonathan ran through the building, out into the parking lot, scanning every car. She was nowhere. She had vanished. Back in his car, Jonathan stared at the dashboard for a long time. His hands shook against the steering wheel. His chest felt like it was collapsing inward. His marriage was a lie. His wife wasn't who she said she was. And the truth hadn't just cut, it had annihilated. The drive home was a blur. Jonathan's hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. The sun beat down on the windshield, casting sharp, unforgiving rays over everything, as if even nature had decided to expose every shadow in his life. The image of Angela, no, Andrew, sitting beside him at dinner, smiling softly, laying her head on his shoulder, suddenly felt grotesque. He replayed their wedding day in his mind. Her veil, her soft-spoken vows, the way her hands trembled slightly when placing the ring on his finger. Had that been love or performance? Jonathan didn't know what he believed anymore. The front door creaked open. The house was too quiet, the kind of silence that made every tick of the clock sound like a bomb. Angela? He called. His voice echoed. No answer. He walked upstairs, half expecting to find her waiting, ready to explain, to lie, to beg, maybe even to tell him it was all a mistake. But the bedroom was empty, her closet still full, makeup still lined neatly on her vanity. Her perfume lingered in the air. But something had changed. Jonathan stormed toward the filing cabinet in the hallway, the one Angela always kept locked. He grabbed a screwdriver and forced it open. Inside, a passport name, Andrew Castillo. A stack of documents, hormone therapy approval letters from a clinic in Santa Fe. Photographs, a boy, teenage years, then early transition. A social security card. A discarded Texas driver's license, years expired. He stared at the photo. A young man with downcast eyes, long lashes, and the early traces of the face he now knew too well. It was her. No him. No both. Jonathan's breathing grew rapid. The world swam around him. His wife, his best friend, had hidden this entire identity from him. For 3 years, he slammed the drawer shut and stumbled into the kitchen. His hands trembled as he poured himself whiskey, more than he normally drank. What else had been a lie? The editing work she claimed to do from home? The childhood stories she never told? The scars he had once believed were nothing but surgeries from appendicitis or an old accident. Everything suddenly took on new meaning, new deception. By midnight, Jonathan hadn't slept. He sat at the edge of the bed, staring at the vanity mirror where Angela once sat, brushing her hair. His mind danced between emotions. Grief, rage, confusion, betrayal. Then something broke. He picked up the framed photo of them from their wedding day and hurled it across the room. The glass shattered, fragments scattering like the pieces of his broken life. He needed answers. He needed her. The next day, Jonathan contacted a private investigator, the same one he had hired months earlier to look into a property dispute. "I need a trace on someone," he said, his voice hoarse. Real name, Andrew Castillo. Formerly from New Mexico. Maybe using the name Angela Reed. The investigator didn't ask questions. Within 48 hours, he had results. Angela's or Andrew's real history slowly came into focus. Born in Santa Fe. Attended high school under the name Andrew Castillo. Disappeared from public records around age 19. Reemerged in Phoenix 6 years later with a new identity. Legally changed through court documents in a private district filing. Jonathan learned that Angela had cut ties with everyone from her past. Her parents were both deceased. No siblings. No social media. No trace. Until now. One of the PI's findings stood out. A rental agreement under the alias Elena Carver. A small apartment in the downtown arts district, leased just 2 months ago. She had a second residence. She was planning to leave. Jonathan drove there the next evening, parked across the street, and waited. An hour passed. Then 2. Then he saw her. Exiting a rideshare, sunglasses on, hoodie pulled over her head. She didn't see him. She walked quickly up the stairs to the apartment, unlocked the door, and vanished inside. Jonathan sat in the car, heart pounding, hands trembling. He didn't know what he would say. He didn't know what he wanted. But he knew this. He had come face to face with the truth. And truth, when delivered too late, too hard, and too cruelly, can turn even love into something murderous. Jonathan knocked. Angela opened the door and froze. Her eyes filled with fear. "You lied to me," he said coldly. "I was afraid," she whispered. "I loved you." They argued. Jonathan's voice shook with anger. Angela tried to explain the surgery, the fear of rejection, the shame. "You took my choice away," he said. Tears rolled down Angela's cheeks. "I'm still me." But to Jonathan, she wasn't. Not anymore. The shouting grew louder. Angela tried to leave the room. Jonathan blocked her path. "You destroyed my life," he said. She screamed, "I didn't mean to." In a rage, Jonathan grabbed a glass paperweight from the desk and struck her. She collapsed. Blood spread quickly across the floor. Jonathan froze. His chest heaved. His wife, the woman he loved, was dead. Jonathan cleaned his hands, stuffed some clothes into a bag, and left. He drove for hours, unsure of where he was going. He ditched his phone and tossed his blood-stained shirt into a dumpster. He crossed into Nevada the next morning. But police were already on his trail. Surveillance footage. Phone records. A witness. Jonathan was found in a motel outside Las Vegas. He didn't resist arrest. At the station, he told detectives everything. She lied. I lost my mind, he said. He showed no remorse, just confusion, heartbreak, and rage. The trial was swift and brutal. The defense argued emotional trauma and betrayal. The prosecution called it cold-blooded murder. Angela's transition was debated in the courtroom, splashed across the news. Some saw Jonathan as a victim of deception. Others saw Angela as a victim of hate. Jonathan was found guilty of second-degree murder, sentenced to 28 years. Angela's story became a rallying cry for the trans community. Her death sparked conversations about safety, honesty, and acceptance. Jonathan sits in prison, bitter, alone, and broken. Love, lies, and identity collided in one deadly moment, and no one walked away whole.